My name is Michael Waterstone. I have the honor of being the Dean of UCLA School of Law, and we are in our 75th anniversary year. We have a really incredible moment today. I am joined by two of the members of the very first class of UCLA School of Law, Arthur Greenberg and Joseph Tilem. We're just a few miles from UCLA campus in Arthur's lovely house. So we're going to have a conversation today about their memories, UCLA School of Law, past, present, and future. Arthur, let me start with you. What do you remember about that very beginning period, that first day, those first weeks of classes?
Well, I'd gone to Stanford in my freshman year of college. I wanted to go back to Stanford Law School, and my parents said, no, stay home. We lived very close to USC. I didn't like USC. So we went to UCLA Law School. And I remember the first year that we were in classes in barracks, Army barracks. I slept in those barracks in the Army. And I was very impressed by the faculty, and the fact that Dean Roscoe Pound came from Harvard Law School was very impressive until he spoke for a half hour on the first day in Latin and never translated what he said. I have no idea what he said. So that was it. I was in the class with about 50 people, and it was a very interesting process. I worked hard. 2 years we were in class in these Army barracks. The third year we were in the law school building. We met every morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, 6 days a week for class. It was tough. Dean Kaufman was a very conservative man, as you may or may not remember. He came from, I think, Tennessee with the football coach that was part of a team, the football coach and the law school dean. And at the conclusion of his first year of law school, of teaching, he asked his successor dean, can I put my picture in the library with the caption founder? His successor said, what was his name, the successor?
I'm trying to remember who the second dean was.
Schwartz?
It may have been Murray Schwartz, yeah.
Anyways, the second dean told Kaufman, yes, Dale, you're going to have your picture in the library with the caption founder. I put my picture next to you with the caption Savior. Kaufman taught class, torts primarily, the tough teacher. But it was an interesting experience. The law school made my life.
Joe, if I could turn to you, what do you remember about those early days?
Well, I came from UCLA undergraduate directly into the law school, but I came in a very serendipity way. I had heard that somebody is opening up a law school, and that sounded like a kind of an exciting idea. So I walked across the campus and found a lady that was taking names to be admitted to UCLA Law School. There was no law school, but I thought maybe I'll try that. And I put my name down there, and I was surprised or pleased to find that I was accepted in the first class of, there were 50 of us that started, and I like to remind people that when we started, it was a ritual 10% women and 90% men. There were 50 people in the class, 5 women, 10%, and 45 men. The ultimate irony, of course, is that the number 1 and the number 2 people in the class that graduated were the 2 women. Today, I understand you've got, what, more
54%.
than 50% plus of women in the class.
I'd love to hear stories, memories from when you were at school, either faculty members, other classmates. I mean, I've heard that the opening dean was quite a character.
He was not very approachable, and he ran a very taut ship. We had torts was taught by him, and he never quite got through the entire book. We never learned, we never had anything about libel or slander.
About negligence, right. But he was very kind to me. In the new building, the faculty had offices on the third floor.
Okay.
And I had a habit, I would type my notes after every class. So we moved in the new building, I said, Dean Kaufman, you have vacant offices. Can I borrow one while I type my notes? Of course, he said. So after every class, I go up to my office and type my notes and go down. He was terrific in that respect.
Any professors that either of you remember?
Well, I remember them all. I mean, Harold Verrill was our professor of procedure and several other courses. We had Brainerd Curry
In contracts.
who taught contracts and constitutional law.
Yeah.
We had Roland Perkins, who had come
Criminal
down
law.
from Hastings, I think, to teach criminal law. We had Ted Jones, who came after the beginning. He was not in the very beginning roster, but he became one of the professors, and he taught wills and I think trusts. And of course, we had the eminent Roscoe Pound. We were all in awe of this man from Harvard University. When Roscoe Pound would give us lectures, once in a while he would cite a case that he was the judge in Nebraska in the Supreme Court, and he would say, now when I was a judge in the Nebraska Supreme Court, this case, it was an equity case, and he'd start to talk about it. We'd furiously be making notes, and we'd put our notes away, and at the end of the day, we'd go to the library and pull the case and look at it, and word for word, Roscoe Pound had told us exactly what he had written about 25 years ago.
Roscoe Pound was an amazing individual. I was a member of Phi Beta Kappa, and in those days, if you were Phi Beta Kappa, you wore your Phi Beta Kappa key on a keychain from your pocket, it hanging out there. So he sees that one day and says, Greenberg, I'll show you how to use this Phi Beta Kappa key. Yes, Dean Pound. He takes his key and a cigar, and he pokes a hole at the back of the cigar. That's how you use the key. It's very valuable. And that was it. The law school was interesting. It was tough work, but it was very interesting, and we solved all kinds of issues. It was an amazing experience, and it made my life in every respect. We started the law firm in 1959 with 3 lawyers. They're now over 120. It's hard to believe. It bears my name. And I was there most of my experience in the practice of law. It came out of the blue. It went from the hourly rate of $30 an hour for the Irving Hill, who was more experienced than Phil Glusker or myself. We were charging $25 an hour. It's now $1,000 an hour.
Can I ask?
It's amazing what the firm has done and how they're doing. There's 120 people. It bears my name. My name is plastered on the building, Greenberg Lusker, and it's incredible. It made my life.
How does that make you feel, seeing your name on the building?
I'm there most days. I'm impressed. It's there. I don't know much of the law firm, too. We all wore a suit and tie in the old days. When you got to your office, you took off your jacket. Now, the question was, you're going to the bathroom, must you put your jacket on or not? That was an issue.
And what was the answer?
Yes and no.
How did people dress in classes? Did people wear coats and ties to class?
Today?
No, back then.
No, we were informal.
Okay. Can I ask, so your first 2 years were in the barracks. Your third year, you move into the building.
Right.
What was that like to move from having classes in this very temporary
We had a funny story about the barracks. When we lived in the barracks, in this class, one of the rooms was available, one of the buildings for recreation or for whatever was considered to be like a reading room or for spare time when you sat around. And we occasionally would play cards. And We had at one point a rather active, they were playing a game called Klaviash, and I have no idea what that is anymore, but that was apparently the card game of the time. And there were nickels and dimes and quarters on the table, and there were about a half a dozen of us scattered around the table. And the door opens up, and who should it be but Dean Kaufman showing off his new law school to some visiting deans from other law schools. And here was our group of players of cards, and that was the end of the card playing. The next day, an edict went out, no more card playing in campus, and we were chastened because of our conduct, not to play cards any longer. A memorable time. My other memory of Dean Kaufman was funny because I walked into his office once to ask him a question, and he immediately knew everybody, and he pulled out a cigar, and he said, "You know what kind of cigar this is?" I said, "No, sir, I don't know." He said, "This is a Blackstone cigar." Of course, those of us who knew Blackstone was the editor or of the original law dictionary, and everybody carried their Blackstone book around, and this was a cigar with the same name, Blackstone. He was very proud of that fact.
Arthur, both of you talked to us a little bit about your career, but I'd love to take us through, you both have had long, distinguished careers where you've done lots of things after UCLA. Arthur, maybe I'll start with you, and then we'll go to you, Joe. So you graduated. You worked for about 7 years, it sounds like, before you started your own firm.
Less than 7.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
And what was that like starting your own firm, and how has that played out?
Well, I had a job at a law firm at $400 a month downtown at 8th and Broadway. And they were nice guys. Two fellows were very nice guys. They had offices that were very elegant, furnished properly. My office faced the air vent. It had no view except for the air vent, and that was it. They offered me a job, full-time job in the firm. I did not like the idea of being in that two-person firm. I saw no future, went on my own. And then I talked to the fathers who came to visit their kids at the boys' camp where I was a counselor, who were lawyers. He said, "Call Irving Hill." I called Irving Hill, and the three of us formed a firm, Irving Hill, Phil Glusker, and myself. Irving Hill and Phil Glusker were together. I joined them. And we began the firm above a Safeway store on Wilshire Boulevard, the three of us. We then moved somewhere at Century City, and then we ended up we moved to Wilshire first, and then to Century City. And it began with 3, but now 120 at this point in time.
Something you don't remember, Arthur, I was on the board of a savings of a bank, and the bank was going under. Apparently the FDIC hired your firm, and they took depositions of all of the officers of the bank, and you took your firm took a deposition of me, and I was scared. That's a contact we had. He doesn't remember it. He was not personally involved, but I was on the hot seat, and it's very different when you're taking a deposition of a client and you're being deposed.
Oh, sure.
It's a very different feeling, let me tell you.
Joe, talk to me about your career.
I started, while I was in my second year, I got a job as I guess you'd call it a law clerk, but I was somebody that filled the paper machine and cleaned up in the office, and I was paid 90 cents an hour. I worked for an office, a small law office on South Beverly Drive, second floor. The building is still there, 247 South Beverly Drive. I walk past it and I see the little window where I used to sit and look out. And then when I passed the bar, I walked into my boss and I said, "I passed the bar, I'm a lawyer." They raised me from 90 cents to $1 an hour. And I stayed there for a little while until one day I got a call from a client of the law firm. He asked me if I was interested in making a move to work for them instead of working for the law firm that did their work. And it was the Diners Club. Anybody remember the Diners Club? That was the first of credit cards. That was in 1953. And in 1954, I was called by Alfred Bloomingdale, who was the owner of the Diners Club at the time, and he wanted to know if I'd like to work there. And I felt a little bit squeamish about it because taking away the client of a law firm and going to work for that client, I felt a little bit disloyal or whatever. I remember I called my father, who lived in New York, and I suggested that should I do it. I was upset, but I decided the difference between making $300 a month and $600 a month, I couldn't forego it. So I became a lawyer for the Diners Club, and I was there from 1954 to 1960. And I was there at the founding of the whole credit card industry. Now, of course, credit cards are ubiquitous. You can't live without them. But at that time, nobody knew what they were. And we became the largest credit card company for a while. At one point, they had 600,000 credit card holders all over the United States. Today, of course, the number is in the tens of millions. But at that time, it was a rather strange device. I remember going back to Washington, D.C. and testifying about credit cards, and Congress didn't know really how to handle them. There was a dispute between who should be liable if a credit card was lost and stolen and merchandise was purchased. Who should pay for it, the card holder, or should the credit card company absorb the loss? It was a lot of give and take on that, and finally we settled on the fact that the credit card company would be liable for the loss except to the extent of $50. And I think that's still the law today, that if you have a credit card and you lose your credit card and somebody charges on it, you're not responsible for it. Even if you don't give them notice, the credit card company absorbs the loss. Of course, now technology has taken over, and but at that time we didn't have anything like that. You just absorbed the loss. I was hired away from Diners Club by Hilton.
Okay.
And I stayed with them for 11 years. I was the vice president of the company and went all over the world. It was a very exciting time to go to South America, to Europe, and the Middle East, and try to sign up banks to accept the credit card at that time. But that was 11 years, so I was pretty much in the credit card industry at the inception, from the Diners Club to the credit card business, that almost a proto credit card of what you have now trace itself back to that. And a lot of the rules and regulations and activities I was involved personally in forming. And at one point I came, after 11 years, and I came home to my wife and I said, I've had this corporate stuff enough. I really want to go back to practicing law. She said, you can't do that. We've got 3 children, and you have a steady, good income here. Start your own law firm? I said, yep, I had to do it. So I went into the head of the credit card company and I said, give you a couple of months' notice, find somebody else. I want to do something else with my life. And I did. I started a law firm, and we were in Century City. We got up to about 11 people, and eventually the men all went their own way, and we ended up separating. And I got involved in politics in my community, and I was mayor of the city of Beverly Hills, and that was a fun period of time to have a totally different experience in life, to get involved in politics. I had no idea what the city hall was, let alone be involved as an elected official, but I was, and I enjoyed that. I somewhat describe it as being taking a postgraduate college education when you're an elected mayor, because you suddenly find you're dealing with things like street lighting, union negotiations, maintenance of a park, tree description, what kind of a tree you're allowed to put into a city and why certain trees are better than other trees, and a whole range of human activities that you would never encounter in any other way except when you're in a hot seat on a city hall. So that was an interesting experience for me. And eventually had enough of it after 4 years, and I said, enough of this public stuff. When anybody comes to you, they'd call you the telephone, this is so-and-so, I voted for you, and there was a pregnant pause. What do you want now? So you learn how to deal with that. That was another facet of my life. I practiced for 68 years, and a few years ago I decided to become inactive with the state bar. But of course, all of my activities of my entire life, I credit to UCLA, undergraduate and law school.
I'll get to that in a minute. What do each of you remember about taking the bar exam?
I remember I had a very small typewriter, which I had in hand. I took the bar exam by typing it.
You typed it?
I typed it.
Okay.
I couldn't write too well at that point in time.
Joe, memories of the bar exam?
Arthur said it triggers a memory. Even when I started to practice law, you became a specialist in whatever walked in the door, whatever could pay the bill. That was how it worked. And a few years ago, I got a letter from a friend who was going through his father's papers, and he found an invoice from my firm for his father's will that I had drawn. And he mailed it back to me with a note on it. He said, "Don't you think you overcharged him? The bill was preparation of will, $15. I became an expert in whatever paid the bill. The one thing I thought I would have a lot of experience in would be admiralty law, because I had graduated the Maritime Academy. I had shipped out as an officer in the Merchant Marine, and I certainly knew all about navigation and all of things at sea. That's the one kind of case I never had. Never had anybody that ever walked into my office about an admiralty question. But I did, bankruptcy and contracts and litigation and a whole array of things. It's really a lifetime experience of varied disputes that human beings have.
So on that, to both of you, do you feel you needed to constantly learn new things when you were a lawyer? Do you feel like UCLA Law gave you an education that helped prepare you for that?
Well, one thing UCLA taught me, in fact, in the learning aspect of it, is to work together. One of the classmates, Saul Grayson, who was in my class, the two of us had a study partnership before the bar, and we worked together, I guess, for a year. And it really taught me something about the need for talking with your colleagues. And I think that learning experience in undergraduate of discussing a case with your colleague stood me in good stead, because many times later on in my law practice, when I'd have a matter that I'd be handling, and I'd scratch my head and kind of wonder, I had no problem in walking into my partner's office next door, knock on the door and say, "Hey, can you spare a few minutes? Let's discuss this case that I have that I want to get your view on." And I think that idea of the collegiality was something I learned in law school.
So you've both stayed very connected to UCLA School of Law. Arthur, our student study in the Greenberg Student Commons. What do you think of our law school today?
I put the student comments in it. I wanted to make that gift substantial, which I did. The student comments bears my name of my wife and myself, and that is it. It's an experience. It made my life. It made my career. It's where I am today. I can't complain about it at all.
That's a great way to give back. Joe?
I had one son who was a lawyer. He went to Stanford Law School.
Okay. We won't hold it against him.
Okay, well, I have some fond memories of UCLA because I was there both undergraduate and in the law school. Of course, the transition from working in the barracks behind Royce Hall, where we had our first 2 years of law school, was it was kind of shocking to walk into this brand new building, and some of the doors didn't open properly. I remember there was a lot of little pickup things when the law school building was open. Of course, now I guess it's old. It's, what, 70 years old now?
Yeah.
That's hard to believe because I can remember brick by brick as a construction site. When they were putting it together, we would look in awe and watch it being built, looking forward to being in that building someday, and it finally came to be that we were able to move in.
What advice do you have for students that are in or graduating law school now?
Well, I think just from looking at my career, keep your options open. So much of it is serendipity. You never can tell when the opportunity is going to arise. Whether I went to work for the Diners Club or Arthur started his law firm, we went in very different directions. But I think the nucleus of our life experiences have been based on what we did in law school, learning in such a wide variety of human endeavors that you cannot tell where you're going to end up in your lifetime. So don't focus too narrowly on one thing, because something is going to come in from left field that'll change your life. It did mine.
That's great. Arthur, what advice do you have?
Be careful in choosing where to practice law.
Okay.
Some law firms are better than others in terms of their treatment of their people. That's a very serious issue. But the law practice to me was exciting, interesting, profitable, happy, and the like. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that we went from being in an office above a Safeway store to where we are now on 3 floors in Century City with 120 lawyers, and my name blasted on the wall. It's amazing at that point in time. It's done very well.
Great. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. What a celebration to be with both of you, members of our inaugural class, as we celebrate 75 years of UCLA School of Law. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's amazing.
Thank you on behalf of the law school for the what it's done for my life.
It made my life and my career. It was wonderful.
Well, the honor's ours.
My mother said to me, Arthur, she told me, I've never been to a lawyer, nor has your father. Don't be a lawyer, be a doctor or a pharmacist. I said, Mother, that's not me.